Welcome, everybody. I cannot tell you how glad I am that COVID is no longer a problem. I'm not going to say too much. My name is Casey King. I'm the originator, the organizer for this event. This is the 16th year that I've done it. Glad you're all here, every single one of you. Hope you got something to eat. So I'm not going to spend too much more time. You've got a really good presenter tonight. You're all going to meet Todd Bridges. Go ahead and welcome him.
He said Willis. Hello, my name is Todd Bridges, and I am an addict. Hey, Todd. When I was 11 years old, I was molested by my publicist. The guy really, had a way to make me trust him. He took advantage of me. After that, something changed inside of me. I didn't know what. When I told my parents about it, my father believed the guy over me. Now that really crushed me. All the bad that happened to me in my life later on with the drugs, me not loving myself, I can definitely trace back to that moment too, where the people that were supposed to protect me didn't do it. My mother did, my father couldn't. So let me start at the beginning. San Francisco was a very peaceful place. All the races got along. We did very well together. I had no idea about racism. I didn't even know what the N-word was. When I was growing up in San Francisco, the only thing I was afraid of was the garage door opening. Because when I heard that, my father was coming home. My father was an alcoholic, abusive to me and my mother. My dad always came home a little bit drunk, and he always scared us. So when the garage door would open, my mom would rush around and get all the kids together and make sure she was doing things right. A few things you need to know about my mom. She was a straight A student, and all the way through kindergarten, all the way through college actually, and she got a B, and she cried about it. Now, the thing that she did, she had 7 brothers. She was pretty tough. So she had to keep what was happening in our home from her brothers because if they found out, she knew what would happen. My mother went to acting school, ACT in San Francisco, and she was a gifted actress, but she was always struggling to find roles because there weren't very many for minority actors. Now, growing up, my favorite TV show was Sanford and Son. Yep. And I used to tell them I really wanted to be like Sanford and Son. I wanted to be like Red Fox and be on television. Now, my mom, she decided that we were going to move to Los Angeles, California and become actors. Now, I remember when my mom told my dad we were going to move to LA, my dad said he wasn't moving. Now, that was the first time my mom really stood up to my dad. She said, we're going to leave even if you don't go. So my dad decided to go. Now, my mom was looking for a place in Los Angeles to find a place to live. So she was looking at a magazine in an area called Culver City. She found a house there, and she talked to the realtor, and they ran my mom's credit. My mom had perfect credit, and we had the money in the bank for a down payment. Now, the great part about it was we all agreed to go down there and see the house and everything in person. Now, coming from San Francisco, we had no idea what we're about to run into. Now, we drove down to Culver City, and I'll never forget, we walked into the realtor's office, dressed really nice with our big afros. They took one look at us and they said, we don't have any houses available here. Now, there was suddenly a total shortage of houses all through the area. That was my first introduction to racism. Well, we got that house. It was still available. How we got it was my mom used one of her white friends to go down there and sign the paperwork, and that's how we got that house. After about a month and a half in that new place, we made some friends with a Spanish family. And they had kids around our age. I think at the time I was like 8 or 9. My brother and I were walking to school one day, with our friend David, and some guys drove by and called us the N-word. Now, my friend David got really mad, but we weren't mad because we knew what the N-word meant in the dictionary. It was an ignorant person who couldn't read or write. That wasn't us. So all of a sudden, David explained to us what happened, and we were pissed. And I'll never forget, you know how you take care of that with people like that? You whoop a few asses. That's how you take care of that. So David explained, so I got in trouble at school one day. I was the kind of kid that if you were being bullied, I would protect you, because I didn't like bullies. So I made a lot of friends though, that way, with the smart kids. Now my first big gig in California was a show called Barney Miller. Now I played a kid that held up Mrs. Miller with a pointed stick, and they put me in jail to teach me a lesson. That was a fun project. It was in front of a live studio audience. Now as an actor in front of a live studio audience, you got an immediate response, from what you were doing. You hear people laugh at your jokes. It gave me a really good feeling inside, and it made me feel complete. Now I know that it was a job, was acting, but in a lot of ways being on television allowed me to express all my emotions because I couldn't do it at home. Now the owner and creator of Barney Miller's name was Danny Arnold. He told me he was going to create a show for me with Abe Vigoda, who played the character named Fish. Now here's a bit of a history lesson. The roles on Roots and Little House on the Prairie, as a kid, I spoke really, really good English. And my mom actually had to teach me how to speak broken English. So, let me show you Little House on the Prairie.
Now, last week I had you write an essay about the things that you liked the most. This week I thought it might be fun if we wrote an essay about the things that we disliked the most. Solomon?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you think of something that you dislike?
Being a nigga. I didn't mean nothing bad. The teacher asked a question and I just answered it.
What'd you say?
'Cause it's the truth. If I was white, my pa still be alive. Being a nigga killed my pa. You answer me something, sir.
If I can.
Would you like to live to be 100?
I'm sure I would. It's not very likely, but I guess all of us like to live to a ripe old age.
Would you rather be black and live to be 100 or white and live to be 50?
In Roots is where I learned about slavery. It made me very angry. Now I remember there was a scene where the slave owner, George Sanford Brown, was my father, and the slave owner grabbed him and tied him to a tree and whipped my father. That really made me upset. We weren't taught much about Black history in school. This is February, Black History Month. We didn't have that back then. So I learned everything I knew about slavery and racism from movies. Now, one of my favorite memories of Roots, though, was actually working with Lloyd Bridges. While his character was despicable, Lloyd was a really, really good man. He left a big impression on me. And I remember during the filming, I was selling candy for one of my schools, and Lloyd Bridges made everybody line up and said, "Buy candy for my grandson." Needless to say, I did win the prize that year, but my grandfather is not white, he's actually black. Now, remember Barney Miller? I was telling you about Danny Arnold? Well, he did got me a show. He delivered it. It was called Fish. Fish was a huge success for me. I really enjoyed doing the show. And when it began to air, I became much more recognizable. But now, I didn't really understand what it was like to be a celebrity, but I couldn't make the same mistakes that other kids made, and it would create such a huge problem for me. Lucky my mom taught me well and kept me in line. But as a black kid, I came to learn I had a bigger target on my back. My mom said, "Remember, you're not a white kid, you're a black kid." And I had no idea at the time what she meant by that. One day on the set, coming back from lunch, I walked past an empty dress room. I saw the producer's kids, Danny Arnold's kids, playing with oranges. And then they started to throw them at the mirror. They invited me to join in, but I refused because having a black mom, I knew what happened if she caught me. So I kind of said, nah, and I went back to my dressing room. But later that day, the stage managers were talking, and I was being accused of it. It wasn't until a few days later that Danny Arnold's kids finally admitted that I had nothing to do with it. But that's when I first realized what Mom was talking about being a black kid and not being a white kid. So, Having a familiar face is not always a great thing, especially when you're black. My mom and I went shopping at a clothing store, and we saw this sales lady. She started yelling at me for being in the store. You know, she said that she recognized me from stealing clothes in here. And my mom explained to the lady that, no, my son's never been in here, but you may recognize him from a TV show. The clerk realized that she made a horrible mistake. But I was still at the age where I was, more into riding bikes with my friends than, spending time thinking about having a girlfriend or anything like that. I was definitely starting to notice girls, and it felt pretty good, they would kind of go nuts on me if they saw me on the streets or at the mall. But my career really started to take off, and that's when my dad met a man who wanted to help us even further. His name was Robert. He was a talented musician and gospel singer who was friendly with most of the elite people, the black people in Hollywood. When we first got to know Robert, he told us he had been working with the Jacksons, and he introduced my family to Michael Jackson, Joe Jackson, and the rest of the family. Robert's connection seemed very desirable to my dad. His insecurities made him, admire people, So the weird thing about Robert was, given the impact that he had on my life, I'm not even sure how my dad came to know him. My mom can't exactly recall either, but she remembers that my dad bringing him in one day during the show while we were shooting fish. Now, in my own memory, my family met Robert through Reverend James Cleveland. Now, back then, Reverend James Cleveland was one of the most successful black gospel singers and preachers in the country. Now, every black family knew who he was. Churches were very, very important to our family. We went to services every Sunday. My mom taught me to trust in God because he loved each and every one of us. He also watches over us every single time. Now, even in my dark days when I felt so far away from God, I knew he was still keeping me safe. I would have been lost without God watching over me. Now, regardless of how we met, there is no doubt Robert made quite the impression on me. He was 6 feet tall, handsome guy, and a great dresser. He always made an effort to look very sharp and very charismatic. The summer I asked my mom about buying myself a new bike. My mom told me I had to wait. But I got that bike. Robert told me he bought that bike. But in fact, I found out my mom bought that bike. Robert would always say whatever you wanted, and I thought he was a friend and I trusted him. Robert wanted to be my publicist, but he made it clear he had connections, to maximize my growing popularity. Full of ideas and energy, Robert always had something in the works. He spent, a lot of times helping my career and hanging out around the house. Now, my mom told me that, it's not a good thing for an older man to be hanging out with a kid. Well, my dad kept saying it was okay. There was always a lot of gifts and he made me feel really, really special. But later I learned that's called grooming. Now, as I look back, it makes sense why my mom was so frustrated and apprehensive about letting that grown man hang out with me. But my dad always fought her on the matter and said, Robert's a good guy, don't worry about it. Robert was spending more time with me than my own father. Now, the encounters that I had with that molester made me feel somehow, terrible about myself. It was like embarrassing. Robert used to tell me to keep it a secret. I remember one day, Robert came over to the house, and I snapped. I jumped on him and I started fighting him. And my mom wanted to know what was wrong, so she drugged me in the room because she was wondering why I was freaking out. I told my mother what he had done to me. My mother believed me. My dad came charging in the room angry and said, Todd is lying. That completely crushed me. The man who was supposed to protect me didn't. Now I'm back at work. Fish is winding down, but my career is keeping pace. Immediately, I got cast in a show called Diff'rent Strokes. It was a primetime show where I played Willis Jackson alongside Gary Coleman, who played my brother Arnold in the show. That was a really big break for me. We played.
Now the world don't move to the beat of just one drum. What might be right for you may not be right for some. Only his born, he's a man of means. Then along come two. They got nothing but the genes, but they got different strokes it takes. Different strokes it takes. Different strokes to move the world. Everybody's got a special kind of story. Everybody finds
played two black kids adopted by a rich white man with a daughter. The father was played by Conrad Bain, the daughter was played by Dana Plato, and Charlotte Ray, who played our maid. The only thing I knew was fiction about that show was I had never seen a white maid before. The show became an instant success, but on the inside, I was crumbling. But on the outside, I looked fantastic and looked happy. Robert continued to stalk me. We went to the police, and the police said there was nothing they could do about it because there were no stalking laws. And the studio found out about me being molested and told me I had to keep it quiet because they didn't want to ruin the show. And there it is again, I'm keeping secrets. Again, I felt, I was left feeling powerless because the adults who were supposed to protect me, outside of my mom, were not protecting me. So my family were having trouble in the neighborhood with break-ins. Our house got broken into 4 times in like the same month. My father decided that we should move to the San Fernando Valley. The week that I was there, I decided to ride my bike to the store and get some chips, some candy, and a pickle. So I came out of the store and I was surrounded by 7 white kids. They were yelling racial slurs and I had to fight my way to get out of there. Now, but not all the neighborhood kids were jerks. I met a few friends. Although I was the only black kid riding my bike. Now, one afternoon I was riding my bike with my friends in the neighborhood. We saw the police, but I didn't think anything about it because in San Francisco when I saw the police, they would just keep going. But they stopped me, they pulled me over, they told me my bike was stolen, they handcuffed me, and they put me in the back of the car and took me down to the station. Mind you, I'm just 12 years old. Something sparked with the police. But my mom, she was a fighter for me. She came down there screaming and hollering at them and made them give me my bike back and release me. But I don't know why they decided they didn't like me. I couldn't figure that out. So the police harassment continued, but once I got my driver's license, I thought the harassment would stop. But no, it got worse. That's when the guns started to come out. And they would point it at me, put me down on the floor, search me, and they would write me a ticket, and then they would release me, but that's when I called it DWB, driving while black. The more I succeeded in business, the more my already strained relationship with my father, deteriorated. Until one day I was 17 years old, my dad was yelling at my mom. I think he got caught cheating again for like the 8th time. He was refusing to move out, so I couldn't take it anymore. My dad was a really big guy. He was like 6'4", but I knew I didn't have much hope intimidating him. But I grabbed a knife and I told him if he didn't leave, I was going to stab him. My dad looked in my eyes and got really nervous and decided he was going to leave. With my father gone, it was like a sign of relief through the whole house. But my mom wouldn't stop crying. Now, with all the pain that was going on inside of me, I couldn't hear it anymore, so I decided I was going to move out. And I also took to hanging out with other classmates and my friends that were celebrities, just hanging out with them. Now that I'm 18, I'm a little older, I began dating. The girl that portrayed my girlfriend on the TV show, I ended up dating in real life. Her name was Johnnie Jackson. Now, I didn't move far from my mom's house down the street because I knew that I needed my mom around because I know that if the police did something to me, I can always count on my mom to come fix the situation. Now, one afternoon, I had left my lights on in my car and my battery drained. So I didn't have AAA back then, but me and my brother and a friend decided to push the car, and we push started it. I drove it back into the driveway, I parked it, and I let the engine run to recharge the battery. I looked out into the rearview mirror, and I see police out there with their guns drawn and telling me to get out of the car. And I said, what am I being arrested for? They go, oh, it's a stolen car. I go, but would you like to see my driver's license and registration? They say, no, just shut up. They handcuffed me, slammed me against the car, handcuffed me, threw me in the back of the car. My brother came out and he's like, hey, what are you guys doing to my brother? And they said, shut up. They handcuffed him, threw him in the car. Now my white friend Lee came out and said, hey, what are you guys doing? They go, shut up, just step aside. So I yelled at Lee to go get my mom. By this time, there was a lot of people outside right now, and people were yelling and screaming at them because they realized that, this was my car and they were harassing me. Everybody was screaming at them and all this and that, so they called for more patrol. There was many more people, many more officers that came there. So my mom finally came down and, my mom pretty tough. After she finished screaming and hollering at them, they decided to, let me go. They looked at my driver's license, looked at my registration, and let me go and said, oh, it was mistaken. It wasn't mistaken. At this point, me and my mom had enough. We called our lawyer named Johnnie Cochran. We sued them, and we won. But the victory was short-lived because some black officers came to my house, and they warned me and my mom that my name was coming up doing roll call, and they were planning on either trying to kill me and planting a gun on me, or they were gonna put me in jail for the rest of my life. So Diff'rent Strokes was on a break, so my mom said, you need to get out of town. So I decided to go to Jamaica for 3 months. Now, while I was away, my mom told me that the police had already tried to frame me. They raided my house and they were searching for me, saying that someone saw me 3 days before that shooting a gun into somebody's window. But obviously, it wasn't me because I wasn't in the country. Of course, there is no child star tale without telling you my money got embezzled. The crazy part about that was, the really weird part about it was my dad knew all about it because my dad was an agent and they were stealing from his clients. So instead of my dad telling me, he didn't tell me. And I ended up losing a lot. I ended up losing $3 million. And believe me, you lose that kind of money, you get pissed. Because I was planning on having a good time, enjoying myself. So I was looking forward to traveling, but unfortunately I couldn't because the money was gone. But fortunately, Diff'rent Strokes had one more season, so I happened to be on that. I don't know if you saw the last show of the season. Did you notice I wasn't on it? I wasn't on the last show of the season because at that point, I was completely starting to crumble. Also, the tabloids were always saying that I was really upset because the show was canceled, and that was a lie. I was upset because I got molested, I got harassed by the police on a continual basis, and my father was terrible. I ended up very angry and very pissed. So, while I was working on the show, I had a purpose. I never had a time to really feel any pain because I was working a lot. So it would surface, but as I worked, it would just go back down. But when I had too much time on my hands, the pain started to surface. So I decided to move. I thought that buying another house would make me feel better, so I bought a big house. And I moved into this place. It was a really nice house, and I decided I wanted to replace the carpet. I was pretty handy, so I decided to remove the carpet myself and just let them put it in. But as I was removing the carpet, I found a big baggie, and it ended up being a half a kilo of cocaine. I didn't know what to do with it, but my friend did. My friend said, hey man, that's cocaine. He tasted it, and I'm like, man, fool, why would you taste something you just found on the carpet? And he was like, it's cocaine to make you feel good. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do it. So he said, just try snorting it. And then once I snorted it, everything went away. All my problems, everything I was feeling, the anger, the sadness. I wasn't thinking about the molestation anymore. I wasn't thinking about the police anymore. I was just in a state that was like fixed, But I will tell you this. The house belonged to a drug dealer, I found out, and that's every addict's nightmare. But the house did not belong to no addict because I would have found the drugs and I would have used them. That would have been me. There's no way that would have been left in my house. I can't tell you how many times I picked the carpet thinking it was drugs. Something I dropped on the floor, Has anybody else done that before? Oh yeah, I think all of us have done that. So then, I decided at that point to believe exactly who the police said I was. I was going to be a drug addict and be no good to anybody. So the thing about drugs is it always made me feel normal when I was doing it. But the thing about it is, my parents never really explained to me why not to do drugs. They would say, don't do drugs, and you go, well, why not? They said, because I said not to. There was never really any good explanation of why not to do it, So, I continued to do as much as I could, I was trying to kill myself with the drugs. And not only was I trying to kill myself, I remember one time I hung myself, and I woke up and the rope was cut. And I was on the other side of the room, but there was nobody in the house. One time I had a gun, I put it to my head, pulled the trigger, it didn't work, you know, and I threw the gun down, the gun fired, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. You know, I figured that God had a bigger plan for me, but at the time, I couldn't hear God. But I will tell you this, every time I prayed, God would put me in jail. I would get arrested. I would pray to God, God, I want to get out of this, and sure enough, I get arrested. So I always say that, you know, God was finding me. He was putting me somewhere, but I wasn't ready to listen, you know. I didn't trust anybody, you know, so it was tough. So then in 1989, I was arrested for attempted murder. And what happened was, I just happened to be in the same area as the guy who got shot, but I was on drugs, you know, so I don't remember much about it. But while I was in jail, a lot of people came to see me, you know, and I sobered up. But let me show you this video.
Diff'rent Strokes star Todd Bridges is speaking out from his jailhouse while awaiting trial.
She said she loved me. She said she'd never lie to me. She said she'd treat me great. She said she'd always be my number one. But she never said she'd put me in county jail.
But Bridges did land in the Los Angeles County Jail. He has pleaded not guilty to a charge of first-degree attempted murder. He's being held without bond. He and another man, Harvey Duckett, are charged with the shooting and knifing of a third man at this address in South Central Los Angeles. Bridges says his road to prison was a straight line, a line of cocaine.
See, first you start with sniffing and snorting it. I said the average start, people say, oh, I'd never freebase, which they're wrong. That's the same thing I said when I first started snorting it. I go, I'd never freebase, that's crazy. So I snorted for a couple weeks, pretty soon there's no more high in snorting it. So you gotta find another level, which is freebase. You start freebasing it, it high instantaneously. You're high, you're up there.
Bridges' fall from grace came after a long, successful run in the series Diff'rent Strokes. He admits his problem was cocaine, but he says Hollywood itself was a big part of the cause.
95%, almost 98%, I follow Hollywood because Hollywood tends to, they rise you up to be this person, and then it's, wow, it's gone. They don't want to use you, they don't want to talk to you, they don't know you.
Ironically, in the middle of all this trouble, Bridges has a new movie out, a low-budget horror film called Twice Dead. And in the odd logic of the movie business, Bridges thinks his incarceration is actually helping.
Producers don't realize all this trouble that I'm in is just going to make me more popular with the people. I don't think they really realize that. I think if I do a movie, it's going to make people want to go see it. All they have to do is link the movie towards something like this.
But for now, he has to deal with the charges he's facing and the life behind bars.
At one time, I even thought about suicide being inside here. I didn't think I could handle it. So I got into God, I got into praying a lot. And God brought me out of it, basically. But as far as, you know, just being on drugs, I'm not on drugs anymore. I'm a fighter now. I'm fighting more and more every day not to go back to my drug addiction.
Bridges goes to court tomorrow to ask for bail. No trial date has been set.
How many of you guys remember when
Diff'rent
you were in
Strokes
jail
star Todd
and you got
Bridges.
sober in jail? How much bullshit you talked? You said you're gonna be sober when you get out. How delusional I was. I had no program. You know, I had nothing. I was in there, you know, thinking, oh yeah, when I get out, I've been 9 months sober. That's because I was in jail. That's why I was 9 months sober. Because believe it or not, as soon as I got out, I was sober for about another month and went right back out. Started using again. And, you know, the thing about when you start using again, you know, money was running short, so unfortunately I had to become my own dealer to keep my drugs going, you know. So I started selling drugs, doing drugs. So I didn't sell drugs for a profit, I sell drugs to do drugs, you know. And nothing changed, my mental state didn't change. I was still depressed, I was still feeling all that stuff that I was going through, all the anxiety, all the crap. I didn't know how to process my feelings at all. You know, I tried to stay sober for a while, didn't work. I ended up, in that time frame, I think I went to like, after that, when I got out, I went to like 4 different programs. Didn't work because I wasn't ready. You know, I had no idea what it was going to take to really stay sober. And I remember the 5th program I went to, and the funny part about it was, I had just got there, and they all went for a walk, and they said for me to go with them. Now, an addict who's not really sober yet, you shouldn't be going on a walk. I went on a walk, they walking, and I was in the back of the line, they walking, they went that way, and I went that way, right to the drug dealer's house. I was, and you know how you get on a run like that? And I was like, I'm gonna get high, and I went straight and got loaded, you know, and I remember, you know, I got arrested again, you know, because I was praying, because I wanted out, I just didn't know how. And I was praying, I said, God, you know, to help me out, you know, and I was praying while I was hitting the pipe. But you know, the crazy part about this is, how many times you get high with somebody and they telling you you should quit? Y'all remember that? You're getting high with somebody, man, you should quit, man. You're like, yeah, you do. And he's like, you should give me that. Nah, dude, no. Keep going, you know? So I knew there was a point that I needed to get out of that. And I tell you what, I got arrested again for that, for like the millionth time. And I was in jail, and I remember Johnnie Cochran coming in the jail cell, and he was like, look, if you don't get your life together, I'm not gonna help you no more. Because Johnny did like almost 40% of my cases for free, because he cared about me as a person. He wanted me off drugs, you know, but so I took that to heart when he said that. And I remember in that time frame, my mom came to my house, because I did get released on bail. And she dropped down some all black clothes. She said, this is what I'm gonna wear to your funeral. You know, and I, you know, that got to me too. And then my brother, he told me, which just really gets to me, he saw me on the streets. And he said he didn't recognize me. And I don't even remember seeing him on the streets. That's how out there I was. So I go to court again for another day. And the judge is like, I don't know if you're ready yet or not. He goes, but you need to show up tonight at 7 o'clock and go to a rehab program. And I remember seeing on the judge's thing, he had a symbol, a sobriety symbol on there. At the time I didn't know what it was, because even though I had been to the meetings, I never really paid attention, you know? So I decided that, you know, I'm gonna get as much drugs as I can that night before I gotta turn myself in to go to rehab, because I figured I did not want to leave myself an excuse. Say, well, I didn't do this, well, I didn't do that. I don't want to leave myself nothing. So I got as high as I could, and I remember all the paranoia came back. I thought the police was coming, I thought demons were chasing me. So, you know, I remember the car showed up, I ran and jumped in the car, and I was looking over my shoulder, and I'm sure the driver was like, what is wrong with this dude? You know, I was like, I'm thinking it was coming from every direction. So I get to the rehab center, and I'm telling them, they're doing the checking me in and all that. And then I went into my room and I fell asleep finally, and I woke up in the morning and said I had to go to a meeting. I was like, I'm not going to no meeting. I'm gonna screw y'all. I'm trying to get some rest. You know, and they were like, no, you got to go to a meeting. So I went to the bathroom. I grabbed one of the shower rod. I grabbed the shower rod, and I was like, come on, who wants it? I'm gonna hit you first. I became violent and agitated, right? So I heard like boom, boom, boom. I'm like, what is that? And all of a sudden I look at the door, and the biggest black dude I've seen in my life, he ducked under the door. And he said, this can be hard, or this can be easy. I went, easy. Because I was no longer high, you know, I was like a little bit, you know, straight. So I was like, this is a big dude. I'm not gonna win this fight. So what they did was they took me up to the psychiatric ward on the unit, and they strapped me down in 4 points. I don't know about you guys, you know what 4 points is? You strap down with all 4 points, and I had a big diaper on. And that's when I realized this is a far cry and very far away from Diff'rent Strokes. I was not Willis at this point. You know, and I wasn't definitely gonna hear Gary Coleman say, what you talking about? That was not gonna happen. So I was sitting there, you know, and I'm trying to figure out how do I stop this? How do I fix this? And I remember I kept hearing people down there laughing. And I'm like, how is people down there with joy? I don't have no joy. I'm angry all the time. I'm pissed, you know? And the counselor came up, her name was Judy. And I love this woman because she took time with me, she talked to me, you know, and she said that, you know, she had this voice that was very soothing. She was a drug counselor. She had this voice that was just soothing. And she would say, you know, Todd, I want you to come down there, but we're all afraid of you, you know? And I felt really bad, and I was like, oh, but please, God, let me say the right words to get me down there. And obviously I said the right words, and she said, okay, I'm gonna let you come down. But she goes, but I want you to see the psychiatrist, you know? So I went and started talking to the psychiatrist. And they did a bunch of blood tests and a bunch of stuff on me. What they figured out was the cocaine I was using had took the sulfuric acid from my brain, and the sulfuric acid, what it does is when you get angry or something, it calms to soothe the brain so you can think about it. So I didn't have that. I was reactive. If I felt like punching you, I would just punch you and be like, oh, dang, oh, sorry. You know, that's just how it was. But that's what the drugs were doing to me, and that's how much rage and anger I had inside of me. So I took that for about 3 months, and I ended up completing the program. And at this point, I wanted to stay sober, but I knew, you know, I needed God and the help of others. So I remember praying to God, and God told me, hey, if you just listen, I will put the people in front of you, and I will teach you how to stay sober. But you're gonna have to listen and not talk. And so I had to make a court appearance again, because I had to pay for what happened. So I went in front of the judge, and I remember the judge says, you know, I don't think you learned a lesson yet, Todd. He goes, I'm gonna send you somewhere. And he goes, so you gotta turn yourself in today. So he sent me to Chino, Men's Correctional Facility. I was supposed to be there for 90 days, but I ended up being there 8 months. Well, what's crazy is when you go into a place like that, everyone, you know, now I'm sober I'm 7 months sober. And the people are yelling and screaming at me, yeah, Willis. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So all of a sudden I see this big black guy, he came over to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, you gotta fight again already. I just got here, I don't wanna fight. And the guy looks around and goes, my last name is Bridges. I told everybody I was your half brother. You go along with me, I'll protect you. I go, man, mama miss you, man. And immediately I was like, wow, that's God. That is God. He put somebody there to keep me, protect me, you know, and I got better food, I got good clothes, you know, I got a job, you know. And the crazy part about it was, so I spent time there, and I remember that I heard from my lawyer that the psychiatric report is whether they're gonna let you out or not. And, you know, the state wants to give you time. The state wanted to give me 7 years for, you know, the drugs and all that. But I think I forgot to mention that when I got arrested that time, I got arrested with speed, cocaine, and a gun. So they were trying to give me enhancement and all that stuff, you know. So I remember the great part about it was when I met with the psychiatrist, and this is always God working in my life. I met with the psychiatrist and we're talking, and he goes, you know, I know you. And I'm thinking, from Diff'rent Strokes, right? Or, you know, he's like, no, not from Diff'rent Strokes. He goes, I know you. He goes, you were at the mall, and my son was there, and you were really nice to my son. He goes, and that's before you know, you were on drugs and all that. He goes, and you're a good kid. You just gotta, you know, get it together. He goes, I'm gonna write a really good report so you can get out of here, but I want you to get your life together. But I was already intending on getting my life together because, you know, I was sober and I wanted to be sober. And I was released. 2 days later, I was released to go home. And I remember I had nowhere to stay at the time because I wanted to go back to the rehab center. But I had to wait a couple days before I went back to the sober living house. And so I stayed in my mom's basement. And I remember an ambulance went by, my mom ran downstairs and she wanted to see if I was still there. And what we don't realize is the pain we do to others. So destructive. Not only does it hurt us, it hurts them. You know, and the only way we can apologize to them is by staying sober. That's the only way. So I went back and I stayed in the rehab, into sober living for like 17 months. And I ended up working at a rehab center, and I was a chemical dependency tech. And I tell you what, when you're sober, and you're in, like I was a year and a half at that point, almost 2 years sober, and seeing people come in, and knowing that it ain't changed, they look toe up, they ain't showered in days, you know. And I remember when I got high, I showered 7 times a day. I just did, because I was high, that's why I showered so much. I don't know if it had anything to do with cleaning myself, or just because I was just high, and it was just something to do, I guess, not to hear the noise or, you know, see the spooks crawling around, you know. I was so high one time, I had a little plastic bear, and I thought the bear was moving, so I shot the bear. That's how bad it was for me out there. So I get out, and I remember, you know, about 2 years when I was 17 months when I was still in the rehab. I remember I was walking one day, and for me, the slip was a slip in the dress for me always. And I remember I saw this girl that I used to get high with, and I was like, oh man, that girl's great, you know, I want to be with her, you know, and I saw some drugs, you know. I could see that she was high, right? And I was like, okay, God, you gotta help me. And I'm not lying. I started running, and I ran like 5 blocks. I didn't stop until I got away from it. I was like, woo. I was like, I didn't even know how I ran that, because, at that point I wasn't in shape either, you know what I mean? I was thin though. When I went into rehab, I was 115 pounds. And I was actually I remember one day I put on my old Diff'rent Strokes Jordache jeans. Remember the Jordache jeans I used to wear? That when I was 12 years old, I put them on. That's how small I was. So I ran away, and I was thanking God. For me, people, how they tell you when you go to programs to find your higher power, and they say, oh, choose a doorknob. No, I have to choose God, the living God in Christ, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to stay sober, because I use God all the time. I tell people this, staying sober is so important to me that if they told me that murder was legal and I had a machine gun, I had to kill all y'all to keep my sobriety, y'all wouldn't make it out that door. That's how important being sober is to me. I would just have to repent for it later. Being sober is like, it's the most important thing. The thing that I've learned is, you can't get time without giving it away. You can't keep it without giving it away. And it's been so special to me. But I remember my sponsor telling me that I had to forgive my dad. That was the hardest thing in the world, was to forgive my dad. But the more, that I thought about it, what made it easier for me was realizing what kind of life my dad must have had. Being a dark-skinned black man in the United States, and he was born like in 1921. Imagine what he went through. And I realized that's why my dad was the way he was. So it was easier for me to forgive him. It just was. I forgave my dad. And because I knew if I didn't, I couldn't stay sober. So I forgave my dad. I changed a lot of stuff inside of me as a person. I wasn't angry anymore. I just wanted to stay sober. I went to, how they say 90 meetings in 90 days? I went to meetings every day. I remember one time they took my license away at the same time I was sober. When I first got sober, 2 years, I got sober, they took my license away for too many tickets. And I remember one time I was going to a meeting and I was on a bus. And I was taking the bus. I wasn't too proud to take a bus. I took a bus, and then, people would go, hey, Willis is on the bus. And I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I just wanted to go to a meeting and stay sober, I didn't care what they were saying. One time I fell asleep, and I ended up in downtown LA. And if you ever look at where far as Culver City, where downtown LA is, it's a long way away. And I had to, ride back, and I had to use the transfer. I was really good with buses, though. I knew how to use the transfers. I knew everything. It was interesting. So when I finally forgave my dad, and I started staying sober, I remember the first job I got, I decided to go back in show business. Because, 4 years, I'm not going to lie to you, 4 years of working in the real world, my checks wasn't paying enough at the moment, so I had to go back to show business where you can make the stupid money. But I was afraid. I was scared because I was afraid to go back because I didn't want to become who I was. Like in that thing where I blamed Hollywood. I don't blame Hollywood. It ain't got nothing to do with Hollywood. It had to do with what I went through, but it had to do ultimately with the stupid decision to use drugs. I just wish someone would have explained it better. So I was about 5 or 6 years sober. I got married. I met my wife Doreen. I got married, and I had a son. And then after having a son, for about a year, I got a letter in the mail. I had a daughter, and her name was Bo. And so I ended up having Spencer and Bo. And you can see they look just like me. Oh, yeah. It was funny because I had to do a DNA test with my daughter, and when I saw her, I was like, I don't need no DNA test. That's definitely my daughter. By the time I was married to her, my wife was like, no, you gotta do a DNA test. So I did it, so it was dead. I remember when, how your brain is broke when you're an addict. When they called me and they said, your social is blah, 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 and I go, yeah. And they go, you are 99.99% cannot be excluded, so I'm not the father. You are 99.99% cannot be excluded, so I'm not the father. You are 99.99% cannot be excluded, so I'm not the father. And it was like, I don't know who you listen to, but yeah, you the dad. And I was like, whoa. And it's funny because I talked to my brother, and he called me, and He said, wow, this is the most serious I ever heard you. Because I'm never usually serious. I'm always usually cracking jokes. And he knew I was serious. So the crazy part about it is I stayed sober for such a long time, but then I got divorced. After 15 years of marriage, I got divorced. And it don't matter how much time you got, I got nervous. And I was like, I got to get to meetings. I got to call my sponsor. I got to start sharing. And I went to 2 or 3 meetings a day because I was scared to death. I knew that divorce can be tough on people and tough on your emotional standpoint. And I mean, I'd go to a meeting and I would share the same thing over and over again about my divorce and how it was. And people would go, share something. I'm like, shut up. This program is selfish. I'm here to save my life, not yours. And then they would shut up and listen, you know what I mean? And I'm sure after about, 6 months of hearing the same thing over and over again, they were like, they would shut it down. So then, so after I go through my divorce, I said I vowed to never get married again. I vowed that. Little did I know, God had something else in store for me. I fell in love again, and I got married again. And the great part about it is, being married again, I've learned a lot of stuff. But let me go back a little bit. I started working on a show called World's Dumbest. Do you guys remember that show? Yeah, on that show. And also, Everybody Hates Chris. Let me show you a clip.
What's up with you, man? You're looking kind of tired lately.
Let me ask you a question. How do you get rid of somebody that's been giving you problems?
Now, when you say get rid of, do you mean get rid of? Or just rid of it?
Just get rid of it. He has a job and I don't want him to have it.
Boy, you better watch what you're talking about, boy. You make a mistake, boy. You want to talk about this first or what?
Man, it's not you. It's my substitute teacher.
Oh. Well, then in that case, what do you know about him?
Well, mostly, just this.
What is this?
His resume.
Well, the ghetto Rambo worked with me.
You see how big I was in there. Let me just tell you this. Boy, when you finally start eating after 5 years of not eating, you eat everything you see. Food never tasted so much better, but I was starting to gain a lot of size, And so I said I would never get married again. I definitely said that, but I definitely did get married. I met a woman, I fell in love again, and I have now, not only do I have my 2 kids, I have stepkids. I have Rockwell, who's 9, Odette, who's 11, Piper, who's 15, and Adley, who's 18. And let me tell you, you have to practice those principles on these kids. So you don't end up strangling them or strangling yourself, boy. It's different. A lot of good things are happening for me now, The great part about it is, on February 24th this month, I will have 30 years sober. Do you remember when you were new and you go into the rooms and someone said they had 30 years, you'd be like, they lying their ass off. I remember saying that a lot. And now I got 30 years and I know there's some newcomer back there going, that fool lying his ass off. But it's like, what I learned is if you just do what the program tells you, you take care of yourself, you give back, you stay in the meetings, you stay in the rooms, you keep hearing what you got to hear, you can get a lot of time under your belt. And every day is great. It's so much better than it ever was for my entire life. Today, I'm able to deal with my emotions. And actually, I know what my emotions are today. I was growing up emotionally stifled. I didn't know what my emotions were because I remember, my dad was the kind of guy if I fell down and got hurt instead of crying, he goes, shh, real men don't cry, stop crying. I told my son, you can cry whenever you want to, dude. If something's wrong, you can cry. You can't cry because you're not getting your way, but you can cry if you're hurt. I get that. The trippy part about the old me was that, I was always running from God. Today, I'm not running from God. I am with God. And I am doing everything in my power to help as many people as I can to, this disease is awful. When I came through this disease, it wasn't considered a disease. It was considered you were just an F up. It's like I tell people, do you think I just intentionally said, I'm throwing my whole career away to smoke crack? I didn't say that. But it caught me and took me away, you know, and tried to destroy everything I love, you know, including myself. But today, you know, the great part about it is, you know, I got a good wife who I can talk to emotionally and not be judged on it. You know, that's the great thing, is having a partner you can actually do that with is a wonderful thing. You know, I'm the kind of guy that I can cry and still fight you. You know, because real men do cry. Real men do have emotions. Real men do feel. You know, I was the first to share about my molestation on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and then everyone started sharing it. And I remember I went to a thing for Sugar Ray Leonard. You guys know who that is, Sugar Ray Leonard? I was at an event for him. He invited me to an event, me and my manager. And I remember I was sitting there, and he was saying that somebody saved his life. He's going through all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, who is this? Must be his wife. And he said, and it's actor Todd Bridges. And I was like, what? It's because I wasn't afraid to speak up about what happened to me as a kid. You know, most of us men want to hide behind it. But to me, a person like me, when you stifle your emotions and you stifle your feelings, that's when the addiction can take over and drag you out somewhere you don't need to be. So I want to thank you all, you guys, for coming and hearing my story. But I do know one thing. Staying sober is the only thing I'm sure it was the devil. That's all right. I'm going to pray for him tonight. You know, if you guys want to contact me on social media, you can do it on Instagram, Twitter. I'm on Twitch. I stream. I play video games. You know, and I also have, you can buy merchandise at the real Todd Bridges. You know, like I'm happy today, man. I'm in good spirits. I'm a good person. I know who I am today. I didn't know who I was before. When I was on TV, it's made up. I definitely don't blame Hollywood no more. That had nothing to do with my downfall. It had everything to do with it. But the thing about it was, when I got sober, it wasn't appreciated. You didn't get applauded. You know, you were considered scum, basically. You know, so, but I do know that God has a plan for me. I know that. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And God will reveal his plan to me eventually. We're probably going to open up a Q&A thing if you guys want to do that. Now, if you guys are tech savvy, don't forget to use that Q&R code if you're tech savvy. So let's go through some questions you guys want to ask. So, who wants to start?
Are we live? Okay, great. So here's what we're going to do. We have one mic. I'm going to walk to you. If you have a question, raise your hand, and we're going to do 2 questions on this side of the room, 2 questions on that side, and we'll just go back and forth until we get all the questions or run out of time. And so I see one in the front here, and so I'll hold the mic, and so if you're down near the end, you'll need to move toward me. And so, okay, first question.
My name is Joshua, and I ain't no joke. I just wanted to ask, you know, you've been with Janet Jackson and on Diff'rent Strokes. Got your face on this little picture here. Do you find it hard to have humility in your daily program?
Do I find it having what?
Find it hard to have humility?
No. No, because people have seen me at my lowest, so I don't care what people think no more. That's the thing that helps me keep my sobriety. I don't care what anybody thinks about me anymore. It's about what I think about me. That's the important thing.
Yeah, so my name is Lewis and I'm an addict. So when after your Diff'rent Strokes role and you had got into drugs, did you ever try to contact Arnold? Gary Coleman through any of this, or were y'all close or separated?
We were close when I got sober, but I was a professional drug addict at that point, so I wasn't contacting nobody. You know what I mean? If I had a cell phone, I'd just pawned it. You know that. We all did. What we did. Pawned everything we got a hold of. I pawned some golf clubs.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in your 12-step program, did you ever consider making amends to the police department that arrested you?
Yeah, but most of them apologized to me for what they've done. But also, you know, nobody believed me when I don't know if you guys remember when I was talking about it, nobody believed me. They thought I was lying. But we see today that I was telling the truth, right? You You know, there's some people who don't need to be officers, but the funny part about it is, my best friend's a police officer. How about that? That's different for me today, believe me. I actually went on a ride along with him and it was wild. That job was rough. I couldn't do that. I don't know how he does it.
Hi, I'm an applicant. My name is Barbara,
Hi, Barbara.
and I do remember you. But my question for you today is: do you still attend meetings, and do you have a sponsor?
Oh yeah, I still have a sponsor. My sponsor's got to be a big dude, so he can shut me down when I get stupid. You know. I still go to meetings. I go to one now. I go one a week. I go to a Thursday night meeting in Phoenix, and it's a good meeting. It's a small meeting, but it's a really, really good meeting. And when you got them kids, you got to get out to a meeting. Let me tell you. Because you know how easy we can forget.
Hello, Mr. Bridges. My name is Chris. I actually, about 12-step program and stuff. What do you find like was the hardest stage? Do you feel like it was more so in the middle process once you've actually overcome and you feel that level of excitement and joy and happiness, but you know that you're one step from falling backwards, or do you feel like it was more during the beginning?
Well, I think for me, the beginning is total surrender. That's the hard thing to do. Every good addict can't surrender easy because we're good addicts. We will make up a million excuses not to surrender. You know, and it doesn't matter what you're going through. I'm arrested for attempted murder. You would think when I would have got out of that, I would have changed right away. But that still wasn't enough. But I think there are tough periods along as you stay sober. There are different tough periods. But what I do know is there's a way to fix it. I do know not to act on it. Wait, talk to my sponsor. Next day, go to a meeting. And I do know things will change. Nothing stays the same every day. It changes. And I do know my emotional standpoint changes. But at least I can recognize that. I didn't recognize that before. Yeah.
First of all, on Big Brothers, I was pushing for you to win.
Yeah, I blew it on one question. Could have won it all.
Secondly, do you go to high schools and talk as well?
I do a lot of schools, yeah. I do a lot of schools. I did a lot of schools recently in New Orleans. But kids don't know. Only kids usually know me from Everybody Hates Chris or World's Dumbest. And then now I just got booked on Everybody Hates Chris. We're doing a cartoon, an adult cartoon, so it's going to be pretty wild, I think.
Well, we need to get it for the recording and stuff. So it can be mentioned.
My name's Joan. I'm an alcoholic. I was wondering, could you speak a little bit about your relationship with your children and your wife and what previous wife? Was anyone in Al-Anon, or how have you worked through all of this with them?
The thing about it was I was never into my addiction with any of my wives. I was sober at that point, so they didn't have to go to Al-Anon to figure out how to deal with me. They just, I was an open book. You know what I mean? I let them know how to deal with me. I told them what needed to happen, how to deal with me, how to do it. And I took them to a few meetings, and once they went there, they knew, how to deal with me. And I was very honest. I've been honest all my sobriety. I'm not afraid to admit when I'm falling down or feeling bad. If I feel like blowing my head off, I told my sponsor, man, I feel like shooting myself today. And my sponsor said, I'll be right over. And he comes over, and by the time he finishes, I'm like, that wasn't something dumb. But I'm not afraid to be honest anymore. So, how do I deal with my kids? That's a different level now. Now, my older kids are different. The younger kids now, man, it's completely a new venture. That's why I got to practice 12 steps on them every day. It's different. Some kids, man, they say some crazy things, man. You be like, wow, I am 2 steps from killing you. I'm thinking that in my head. I ain't saying it out loud, you know what I mean? And then I pray, and then I say, God, just save your life. Amen.
Hello, I'm Kel. I'm an alcoholic. I was curious, you go into 1 meeting a week, do you find time to be able to work with newcomers?
Yeah, I work with a lot of newcomers still. But I always tell newcomers that if you get high, don't call me. Call me before you get high. But I have learned not to put him in my car anymore because I had a newcomer in my car once, and then I happened to be, I dropped him off at a meeting, I stopped at a light, and a crack pipe rolled down the thing. And I was like, man, if I would have got pulled over with that, they're going to say it's mine. And then everything I worked for would be out the window. everybody say, I knew you wasn't sober. So, you know, I now be like, I'll meet you at the meeting. Oh, I gotta catch the bus. I'll meet you there. Or I'll catch the bus with you. But I'm not about to put in my car anymore. I can't take that risk anymore right now.
Okay, and to you, Karen.
Alcoholic Karen, you know, you touched on it just a little while ago about your anonymity. How do you deal with
Oh, we don't have anonymity.
Well, I know that, but you know, there was a CNN newscaster, and she got on there, and she, AA did this for me, AA did that for me, and then I don't see her anymore. My first thought is that, oh, she went back out. So how do you keep that tight and that connection?
Well, the thing is about it is that, okay, what's difficult about when you're famous trying to get sober, everybody's making jokes about you, making fun of you. And just think about when you're going through the toughest part of sobriety in the beginning, especially the beginning, and you know, you just want to watch a show to try to relax and forget, and all of a sudden they crack a joke on you, you know, about using drugs, and you're like, man, now you start feeling less about yourself. But it wasn't until I fully got in myself okay with what happened and don't care about what happened, and I'm okay with myself, they can make as many jokes about me as they want. So what I found out was the stronger I get, the funnier. I look back and some of those things were really funny that I went through. I mean, come on, picking the carpet at midnight trying to find something. You know what I mean? You know, it's crazy, but it's funny actually, you know? I make humor of it now because, you know, it happened. I can't lie about it. But when you're a celebrity, you have no immunity. Your business is all out there. You know, and then you always have the people who are still getting high judging you. You know what I mean? They sitting there saying, oh, look at that boy. He messing his whole life up. You know what I mean? He getting high judging me.
Hey, I'm Matt, and I'm an addict.
How you doing, man?
Big fan of yours, grew up with you. You know, you kind of touched on it a little bit. I know, like for me, when I came into the rooms, I had a business, I had a little bit of prestige, and I had that edge on my shoulder, and don't you know who I am? And I just couldn't imagine being a celebrity and like that edge that you must have had, or like, don't you know who I am?
No, I didn't have that edge. I had the edge of, I need some help. I came in angry, mad at the world. You know, that's when I came in blaming everybody, not accepting any responsibility. That's what I did when I came to the room. I remember I bumped into this big guy, and I was like, what's up, man, what's up? Why you bump into me? Like I was gonna fight, and he was like, keep coming back. That's what he told me. And I never understood what he was saying. Keep coming back. And I was like, what the hell is he saying, keep coming back? And you know, now, that's what I'm telling people. Keep coming, when they're angry, I'm like, keep coming back. You'll change. You know, you become a much better person, you become a more gentle person, because you become more, the more I became gentle with myself, the more I became gentle with anybody else. Because I was hard on myself, so if I was hard on myself, I'm going to be hard with the people. But, you know, I think the most difficult thing was, you know, showing your family, you know, making them, you know, forgive you because of what you've done to them. You know, it took years, and, you know, the longer I stay sober, that's my thank you to them.
Todd, thank you again for the second time we saw you today. Do you sponsor, and if you do sponsor, how many sponsors are you apt to take on so you can keep yourself in good standing? You know, not to get burned out.
I have 3 sponsees, you know, but usually I only carry 2. And I'm doing 3 right now because I'm doing a favor for somebody else who's out of town right now. My sponsor is somebody really famous too. I can't tell you who it is because he's anonymity. He does have anonymity. I don't, unfortunately. But I think for me, I needed somebody who was in the business also, who could really, you know, because there is different nuances in the business and different things. It's different levels of the business, and it's a lot of pressure. And I needed this guy. When I first got sponsored, my sponsor was a big dude because I needed somebody to shut me down. And now this guy he's a big dude, but you know, he knows how to talk to me. He knows when I'm, you know, going left field. I think the most important thing for anybody who's in the program is to realize that what we have between our brains is a little broke. You know, and you know, because I'm thinking one way, and then I got to hear the right way from him, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what was I thinking this? You know, so it's important, like I said, that we give back. Because you can't keep it if you don't give it away. You know, you're gonna lose it. So I keep giving away because I want to die being sober. I don't want to get high anymore. I'm done with that. I'm over that stuff. Getting high don't work. Just say no, that didn't work. You guys remember that Just Say No campaign? How many of us did that work on? It didn't work on me. I said no every day while I was getting high.
Hi, Todd. My name's Ann. I'm an alcoholic. So you talked about forgiving your father. What about your abuser?
I forgave him, but if I see him, I'm still gonna give him a left hook. I'm not gonna lie. I forgave him, but I don't like him. And I hope I never see him again. Because I don't know how I'm gonna react. I just gotta go to jail for a couple of days, I guess. But I guarantee if I get in front of a jury and they hear what happened and what he did to me, oh, they'll let me go. You know, it's like, I tell you what, a friend of mine saw him, because you know what, most of my friends and my brother and all his friends know the story of what he did to me, and they saw him, and they started chasing him. He started running because he knew it. And I could just imagine if I would have been able to actually go to the police and actually have him prosecuted, what could have happened? He probably would have, you know. So unfortunately, the studio stifled me from that man getting arrested. It stifled me. And I feel bad because I don't know how many other kids he could have hurt too. You know, I was very mad at the studio for that. But when you're in a contract, unfortunately, you know, you have to do certain things they want you to do. That's just how it works.
So, Todd, I'm Lewis and I'm an addict.
Hi, Lewis.
So you say you forgave this guy, but if you see him, you're gonna give him a left hook. Yeah. Like what level of forgive? Like, did you totally forgive him?
Oh yeah,
like, how does that
give him a
work?
left hook. There ain't nothing wrong with that. He's a molester. He hurts children. If you ran up and seen a kid getting hurt, you wouldn't do nothing to him. You just let him do it.
Yeah, I would do it.
Exactly. So he deserves at least one left hook. At least one. At least one.
Anyone else have a question? I actually have a question. My name's Wes. I'm an alcoholic. So apart from drugs and alcohol and addiction, how has being in recovery changed you as a parent?
Well, the thing that I think that has changed in me as a parent is I'm different than my parents were. You know what I mean? I'm a lot more understanding, and I also let my kids show their emotions. They can tell me if they hurt or don't like something that I've done, and I'll explain to them why I did it. You know, in the '60s, growing up, man, you couldn't say nothing back to your parents. You did what they told you to do. That's all it was. You didn't do it was bam. You know what I mean? You know, I remember one time my mom threw a shoe, and it seemed like it turned the corner and hit me in the head. Anybody else had a mom who threw shoes? Yep, it was like it came around the corner, it was like whack! But I give my children, you know, an opportunity to at least, you know, explain how they feel before you shut them down. Explain to them. I explain to them why I did something. I just don't let it go anymore. I think that they owe at least that explanation.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Sorry. By the way, I'm an alcoholic. Just to let y'all know.
Well,
That part out
before you
last time.
finish, I want to say one more thing to you about the right hook. I forgive, but I ain't God, and I ain't Jesus. Remember that. I'm a human being. So he gonna get a left hook. Next.
Well, dealing with alcohol, it was kind of a pretty short period, and it was off and on, and I was more of a binge drinker. But being sober and living a sober life, the hardest thing I feel was to deal with somebody that you love and you care for walking down that same path and living that same lifestyle, and you know with all your heart you want to be there and support, but your sobriety is on, depending on their sanity, you're wanting to pull your hair out, and you're just, what do you, like, how can you give any advice in that standpoint of where you came from, if that's ever been a situation, you know, you've gotten your life together and straight, but you have other people that depends on your sobriety and theirs to overcome.
Well, the thing that helps me is knowing it's not them, it's the disease. I think that makes me, you know, have a lot more empathy for people, because I look at myself, it wasn't me, it was that disease. And, you know, I've had a lot of friends over the years that I've helped, and they went back out and they're dead. I've helped a lot of celebrity friends that have passed away from it. You know, I've tried my best. I've been friends with them. I've tried taking the meetings. I tried to help them, and they go back out, you know, and they don't make it. You know, I had the guy from Stone Temple Pilots in my sober house, and I tried my best with him. And some of us get it. That's what we talk about. There's some of us who are never going to get it. And the ones who are not going to get it, you just got to keep moving forward and know the program works because you're still in it. You know, and but there are a lot of success stories too, you know, that I've helped. A lot of people go on and do great things. And I think that when it's a family member, you just got to love them through it and help them as much as you can. But if you're new in the program, you need to find them another sponsor that has time in it. And you need to move out the way and let the other sponsor do it. Because you know, you can't give what you don't have. You know what I mean? If you only got, you know, a couple of months or like, you know, it's going to be tough to help somebody. You need time to help people so you can, you know, do it the right way and not lose your own sobriety process. I'll give you a thing. When I first got sober, I started getting sober in 1983, 84, I think it was. 84, and I was 21. And I remember I went to help Dana Plato. She got arrested again. And I was like a year and a half sober. I was going to meetings, not a lot of meetings. I remember I went and I had to go on the stand for Dana Plato. And the prosecution beat me up. And I went home and relapsed that day. I shouldn't have been there. But it was my friend, and I thought it was my duty to help her. You know, but that's when I know now it's a selfish program. I didn't have enough time. I shouldn't have been there. It's been like, Dana, I love you, but I can't go. I ain't ready yet. You know, I myself is on, you know, on skates.
I'm Jane. I may step on a few toes. I'm a member of Al-Anon and have been for quite a while. So if you want to help somebody, go to the Al-Anon program because it's going to help you in relationships.
Yep.
Sobriety keeps you sober.
Yep.
Al-Anon teaches you how to live with people.
Oh, yeah.
And now, the people in your life that you love, they need Al-Anon just as much as you need your program. Because your disease is going to be with you for the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
And if they have lived with an alcoholic, an addict, have been affected by the disease in their life, they need Al-Anon. And it's the same 12 steps, but it's as selfish as your program is, because the only person I can help is me. The only person you can take care of is you. And the only person that can do anything for them is the higher power, so you just turn them over every day.
Oh, yeah.
But all of us, especially addicts and alcoholics, could all benefit from Al-Anon. That's my speech. Sorry.
Okay, definitely. I'll have to try it. My mom went to Al-Anon, and let me tell you, that's why I showed up with them clothes. And I got arrested one more time. She hung up on me. She was like, I'm not going to help you kill yourself. And let me tell you, that's a, you know, when you know, I'm sure it was tough for her, because I was her baby son. I'm sure it had to be rough. So Al-Anon did something for her, and evidently it helped me further get down the line to find my sobriety. And, you know, thank God for God. Let me tell you, otherwise I would not be here.
Just for a second.
My name is Tanya, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Tanya.
We know this is a hereditary disease, so I wanted to see how your kids were doing.
You know, it's interesting. I think, you know, what's crazy is none of my kids, you know, are doing that. I explained to them the hard facts and showed them all them tore up pictures of me and what's going to happen if you use it. You know, and all my kids are like, I ain't using that. I ain't going to end up like Dad, you know. And I'm not afraid to ask questions if I success them. But my kids just don't really do anything. I mean, my son works, you know, has a good job. My daughter is just finishing college. She was a slow starter because of her mother, I think, because of that. When I see the behavior, you know, I help curb it. And also, I think that for me, it had a lot to do with not being able to express my emotions and my feelings, you know. And I taught them how to do it, how to express, how to be, you know, how to go ahead and cry, you know. And my kids can tell me whatever they want to me, you know. They can talk to me, you know, not disrespectfully, but they can talk to me. Because they do know that I still got that crazy side, so. My stepkids are learning that now. So look, they see in my eye, they be like, ooh, something wrong with him.
Okay, Todd, shut up, Lewis. Robert, grateful recovering addict. One last question. I had a crack dream last night, and I shared today. I'm in my 7th month after 5 years and 9 months, you know. So, have you had any, or
I had a dream last night.
Because we know this is a spiritual disease, right?
Yeah, here's what I learned in my dreams. I know I'm dreaming, and I go ahead and use it in my dream. I don't, because if I resist it, it's more of a fight when I wake up. If I go through it, when I wake up, I'm like, woo, glad that was a dream. You know? But that's what, I don't know what you should do, but I'm telling you what I do. I'm in a dream, I'm like, man, this is a dream. I know I ain't went this far. You know, and I get up and I called my sponsor this morning. I talked to them and told them about the dream and all that. And he said, man, just, you know, he's the one that told me if you resist, it's going to make it tougher when you wake up. You know, so I didn't resist it. But then when I woke up, I was joyous. I was joyous that I still had my program. I was joyous that I was successful. But that's just, it doesn't scare me anymore because I know it ain't real. That's what I realized. You never have a dream when you're with somebody and you start dreaming, you're like, oh, this is great. And then you're like, oh, this is a wonderful dream, and all of a sudden they turn to the boogeyman. I've had that dream a lot, but that's okay. I'm not afraid to dream anymore. That's what it is. And I'm okay with myself today, so using dream is not strong anymore. It doesn't really affect me emotionally, you know, and I just continue with the dream, you know, but when I wake up, I'm just grateful. I think that, for me to still be alive, I'm grateful every day. I should be dead on more than one occasion, you know. So, and for me, that's the power of Christ. That's the power of this program. You know, Bill W. did it all for us. He wrote the book on what to do. You know, so I'm very happy with, you know, who I am today. I'm okay if I dream, as long as it ain't real.
Hi, my name is Lorraine. I'm not an addict. But I just want to say I'm so glad you got your life together and then Christ is in your life. And I'm just so glad that you're telling your story, being a blessing to others. And all the other addicts that were addicts are going through. I thank God for y'all. I'm proud of y'all. And just keep going.
Thank you.
Just God is with you and He promised He'll never leave us.
Oh, yeah. That's
so
right.
Just keep holding on and keep fighting.
Oh, definitely. I do know God is my strongest force, and He saves me every single day. Keeps me from relapsing, keeps me from doing stupid stuff. But I can't help that stupid thinking, that stinking thinking sometimes. But I do know to call and talk about it and get another opinion from someone else. You know, I know my brain probably will never be fixed, but as long as I keep going every day, I can strive for perfection. I may not get it, but I can keep striving for it. I can keep my sobriety in the process.
Hi, I wanted to ask him a question to correct my thoughts of what I thought he had said. I have been sexually abused, so I want to understand on his end, does he think that's a sickness from the man that sexually abused me, that was a sickness, or should I look at it differently?
Well, I'm not a specialist on that, but I do know the man must have been sick to abuse a kid, or to abuse anybody. When you abuse people, you're definitely not all in your right mind. The question is what do I get after it? How do I become, and how do I stay? I'm no longer ashamed of what happened. I don't like what happened, but I'm not ashamed of it. I was a kid, I was being groomed, and I got groomed. I think that we have to look at kids when that happens to them, that the person that did this to the person needs to be in jail for the rest of their lives. That's just how I look at it. They don't ever need to get out. I don't think that can be fixed or solved. Children are innocent. They deserve nothing but our love. That's it. And not, sexually, but our love, real good love. The love inside the brain and loving them to be who they are. My kids today, they know what love really is. And love is not sex. It's nothing to do with that. It's not hurting someone. It's loving them, and I'm sure Robert was sick. I'm sure he is still sick, probably, but anyone who hurts someone is sick. That's the way I look at it. I'm not an expert though, so on that, I'm only an expert with myself. I'm still not an expert yet. Just beginning.
So I'm going to be in Phoenix next week for the Super Bowl. So maybe I'll see you at a meeting.
Well, Phoenix, actually the Super Bowl, my team, the Eagles. My Eagles fly. That's my team. If you look at my Twitter, you'll see all my Eagle stuff. But I'm actually going to be in LA during the Super Bowl, even though I live in Phoenix, because I play on a men's adult baseball team, and we have a party every year for the Super Bowl. And I had to quit halfway through the season last year because I dislocated my shoulder and tore my bicep and had to have my bicep fixed and my shoulder fixed. So I got that fixed. But I still got to go to the baseball party. But yeah, we winning it all, ain't no doubt. Holmes has no idea what's coming for him. It's the defense they don't respect. The #1 defense. Well, then maybe start seeing fly Eagles. To victory. Fly Eagles. I know that song by heart, trust me. 1, 2, 3.
Let's give a round of applause for Todd Bridges.